Hey there, Mike Robbins here, coming to you live for the first time in 2022. So even though it's January 20th as I'm recording this, Happy New Year. It's been almost a month, I think, since I went live, maybe like 3-4 weeks. Anyway, I want to talk a bit about freaking out. So if you're joining live on Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube and you want to just chime in and let me know how you're doing, where you're at, what's going on, that would be great. If you're watching the video of this after the fact, feel free to just pop a little comment or a message to say hello or ask a question or whatever you want. Gosh, again, Happy New Year. Lots happened over the last few weeks since I was on here live last, I'm sure in your life, just like in my life, in the world. With Omicron and COVID and so many other things. But we were fortunate enough to get away over this past weekend. We had the long weekend with Martin Luther King Day, and then our girls had an extra day off on Tuesday for some reason. So we went up to Lake Tahoe to ski. And as we were driving home, Michelle, my wife, and I were talking in the car a little bit about, she's been reading, or I think she just finished Brene Brown's new book, Atlas of the Heart, which I have purchased but have not yet read myself. Have heard great things about it. It's been like the #1 selling book, nonfiction book in America for the last 6 or 7 weeks. And hey, Corinne, nice to see you. How are you? Thanks for joining. So Michelle read Brene's new book, and she was sharing with me a little bit about it. It's a lot about emotions and language for emotions and understanding emotions more deeply. But she was sharing something that really resonated with her, Michelle, and she thought it would resonate with me because she said, Brene was talking about her own tendency to freak out or not to respond to stress or challenge all that sort of mindfully and gracefully. And this is definitely something that I struggle with. And Michelle shared a quote from the book, or 2 questions that Brene asks herself when there's a tendency to freak out. The first question is, do I have enough information in order to actually freak out? And usually, as Brene says, the answer is no. So I don't actually have enough information. I'm going on just a little bit. And then the second question, which is, I think, even more important, is, will freaking out help? And the answer is always no. So the first question is, do I have enough information to freak out? The answer is most often no. And even if I do have enough information to actually legitimately freak out, will freaking out help the situation? And the answer is always no to that. And Michelle and I were kind of laughing about this in the car, but I've been sort of sitting with this and kind of meditating on this for the last few days. And look, a couple of things that have come up in my mind and in my heart as I've been thinking about this. First of all, there's been a lot going on for all of us for, the last 22 months during COVID and just life in general. So this notion of not freaking out, by no means am I saying that there aren't legitimate things for us to respond to in life, things that are upsetting or sad or scary or difficult or painful. Not at all. There are. I've definitely dealt with many of those in my own life over the course of the almost 48 years I've been alive. And in an ongoing way, there are things that happen in my family and my business and life in general and happening in the country and in the world that I believe are important and warrant a response from me, and sometimes a passionate response. So, but there's a difference, I think, between freaking out, which is kind of a knee-jerk reaction, and authentically responding. Those are very different. The difference between reacting and responding. Hey, Casey, thanks for joining. Yeah, lots going on, right? So again, reacting is more of knee-jerk, kind of unconscious, habitual, emotional, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but just like, it's kind of like, someone jumps out from behind the wall and scares us, and we have that knee-jerk reaction of just whereas something scary happens, and then we authentically and passionately and even emotionally, but choose to respond deliberately and mindfully. Those are very different. And look, I come from a long line of freaker outers, so it's kind of, and I'm not saying this to blame my parents or anyone. Hey, Ray, nice to see you. But it's kind of a habitual thing for me. I'm a pretty passionate guy. I'm a pretty sensitive guy. I tend to react quickly to things. And again, usually when any of us, maybe you have a tendency to freak out often or not that often, maybe you work with or live with people who freak out. Again, it's part of being human, and it's always going to happen to some degree. But if we can be more conscious and more aware and more mindful, we can shift from just sort of automatically freaking out to, again, more mindfully responding to what's going on, difficult or otherwise. And again, none of us, I don't think these days, are playing with a full deck. Most of us are tired, if not exhausted, weary from 22 months of a pandemic, from all the different things that have happened in our country and our world over the last couple of years, from all the things that we're dealing with personally in our lives, not just related to the pandemic and other sort of more national or global things, but just life. I mean, we're constantly carrying things as human beings in the best of times, but as I work with teams and talk to people and we, share what's going on sort of down below the waterline, as I like to say, it just seems like now more than ever, people are really impacted by life. And that may be true for you as it is for many, many people that I know and work with and talk to. That said, what are some things that we can do in the face of challenges, uncertainty, difficulty, stressful situations? Hey, Andrea, nice to see you. I hope things are good in New Zealand. Because they're there and they're always going to be there to some degree, sometimes more than others. But how can we respond to stress, to difficulty, to pain, to challenge, to uncertainty, to change, disappointment, more than just simply freak out and knee-jerkly react? I mean, the first thing is we have to be aware. So I think those questions that Brene asks are really great, right? Do I have enough information? Usually the answer is no. So maybe I can get more information. And will freaking out actually help this situation? No, never. Now, there are times in life to respond passionately, to respond intensely, but that's different than freaking out. It's subtle, but it's different. So here are some things that I've been thinking about that I can do, that we can do to shift more from that knee-jerk reaction, more to that authentic and mindful and effective response. First thing, we got to check in with ourselves. So asking those questions that Brene talks about is one way to check in. Just check in, get curious. How am I actually feeling? What's going on? If I get triggered, like, why am I triggered? So to get curious, check in with ourselves, get curious, what's happening, right? Just some sense of self-awareness, which can be hard if in those moments of freaking out. Part of why we freak out is maybe because we're not super self-aware. So it's kind of a chicken and egg thing, right? But can we check in with ourselves, get curious about what's going on in our minds and our hearts? Why am I having this reaction? The second thing related to checking in is actually feel our feelings. What's the feeling, or what are the feelings underneath the reaction? I'm feeling scared. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling disrespected. I'm feeling out of control. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling whatever. I mean, again, the more we can speak to it, articulate it, even if we're not exactly identifying it, just talk to what's going on. Usually, again, it's the whole thing, like, when you're arguing with your spouse about the dishwasher, it's not usually about the dishwasher. There's something deeper. I'm not feeling connected to you. I'm not feeling appreciated. I'm feeling really tired. I'm feeling taken for granted, or whatever it is. If we can go to that next level of simply not just reacting to the circumstance, but going to the feeling. So we check in with some curiosity, with some self-awareness. We allow ourselves to feel our feelings. The truth about feelings, from what I understand in my own experience and looking at this and studying this and thinking about and writing about this for many years, is like, we think of positive feelings as happy, joyful, gratitude, love. And those are definitely expansive emotions. And we think of negative emotions as sadness and anger and hurt and shame and guilt and jealousy, and right. And those are much more constrictive. But the reality of emotions is, if we actually authentically feel an emotion, it transforms into something positive. We sort of release the energy of it, right? Feeling joy and excitement and gratitude and love, when we express it, it sort of releases it and can accentuate it. Ironically, with the more constrictive emotions that we normally think of as negative, when we feel those and even express them appropriately, we can actually sort of take our power back from them. Have you ever been really upset about something and cried, and in the crying, it's such a release, and you feel better after you're done crying? Yeah, the thing you're crying about didn't magically change just because you cried, but allowing yourself to really get moved to tears and let that emotion move through you, it cleanses us and kind of something releases. So there's there's real power in that, or acknowledging that we feel angry or scared or hurt can often sort of create more space around it. So I think this notion of kind of, oh, I only want to feel positive emotions and I don't want to feel negative emotions, not only is it erroneous, it's not really possible. And the way emotions work, if we mute our sadness and our anger and our hurt and our disappointment and the more negative ones, it actually mutes it on the other side of the spectrum as well. So we can't feel joy and love and gratitude as intensely because we're constantly monitoring and managing our emotions. So feeling our feelings is really important. As my counselor Eleanor likes to say, feel the feeling, drop the story. Right? And Ray, to your point, sometimes accepting is the only answer, right? It's that great Byron and Katie quote that I use all the time when she says, when you argue with reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time. So can we accept what's going on, not only the circumstance, but also the feeling? And the thing about feelings is they change, right? They're kind of like the weather. They're not constant. So sometimes I'm feeling really sad. Sometimes I'm feeling really excited. Sometimes I'm feeling really angry. Sometimes I'm feeling a mix of a lot of emotions. But the more that we can identify what we're feeling and actually feel it, the more we can move through it more deliberately, more consciously, and the less afraid we are of our own emotions. The third thing we can do to shift from that sort of knee-jerk reaction, freak out, to more authentically and mindfully responding is ask for help. Asking for help is really powerful. Acknowledging that we need some help or we could use some support, like asking for what we need. I need a break. I need to go lay down. I need some help with this. I don't understand this. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling stressed out. Can we talk about this? Whatever it is, it often releases that, because oftentimes we're trying to suck it up and just push through it. And a lot of people are struggling, and I got to be a leader, and I got to be in charge, and I got to have the right, all the stuff that we lay on ourselves. Like, what if we could just ask for help? Even just, oh my gosh, I'm freaking out right now about this. Can you help me? Can you help me calm down? Can you help me not go into that crazy story in my mind? You know, it wasn't last night. It was the night before. I was really tired. We got home from our trip, and I went to Chicago Dallas late last week, and I was on Central Time just for the night. But I came back, and I've been waking up really early, and we were skiing. Anyway, was really tired, so I fell asleep at like 8:00, 8:30, something like that. And then when Michelle got in bed, I woke up, and I think I got up, and then I was awake for a minute. And I went to the bathroom, and I got back in bed, and I was cold, like had chills, kind of cold. I was like, is it cold in here? And Michelle was like, no, I think it's you. And then I started like, oh no, I have chills. And then in my mind, I started to kind of spin and spiral. I have COVID. Oh no, right? I mean, lots of people are testing positive for COVID these days with Omicron, even people who are, vaccinated and boosted like I am. And it's all this is happening. But I spun myself out for about 15 minutes and couldn't fall asleep because I was having a little freak out. Even in my own mind, I wasn't saying it to Michelle. I wanted to let her sleep. But I caught myself doing it and then kind of laughed. And it's like, if that's happening in a time when, I guess I could have woken her up, or she was just falling asleep, and say, hey, babe, can we talk through this? Because I'm freaking out. But can we ask for help? Maybe it's a practical thing. Could someone do something for us or take something off our plate? Or maybe we could just share what's going on internally, and that can help us not spiral into that freak out. So if we check in with ourselves and really what's going on, get curious, feel our feelings, and ask for help, those things can allow us to the fourth step, which is respond mindfully, deliberately, specifically, consciously. Now, again, sometimes when I talk about this or think about this, and some of my own justification for freaking out is like, I care deeply, I'm passionate, these things matter, this is a big deal, whatever it is. Something at work, something at home, something with the family, something in the world. It's like the bumper stickers I used to see as a kid growing up in a very progressive, Bay Area. I grew up in Oakland. It's like, if you're not outraged, you're not paying attention, which to some degree I agree with and understand where that sentiment comes from. But at the same time, it's like, okay, if I really want to influence change in my life, on my team, in my community, in the world, is constantly reacting and being freaked out and outraged about everything really going to both be effective and also give me the strength and the ability to address those things? I don't think so. I've been thinking about Martin Luther King this week, of course, because we celebrated MLK Day on Monday. And one of my favorite Dr. King quotes, he said, "We have no morally persuasive power with those who can feel our underlying contempt for them." Think about that. We have no morally persuasive power with those who can feel our underlying contempt for them. Now, think about that in the context of everything that's going on in our world right now, but also think about that in the context of when Dr. King was saying that, who he was saying it to, and what was happening in the country at that time during the civil rights movement. He was saying to people who, in my opinion, had justifiable reason to feel contempt for other people and for the systems and structures in place at the time, and could argue even now, as much as things have changed and progressed, where we still are, like the level of contempt, the level of outrage, that's not right, that's not fair. And what Dr. King was saying is, we're not going to have morally persuasive power to change some of these systems and structures and thinking if we come from a place of contempt. Another way to think about what he was saying, and this is a bit of a stretch, but related to what I'm saying, is don't freak out. Don't just knee-jerkly react from that place of righteous indignation. Respond from a deeper, more authentic, more effective place, more mindfully. Now, look, there are times in life when it's appropriate to scream, when it's appropriate to yell, when it's appropriate to bang our fist on the table. We can do that authentically. One of the examples that I often think about in this regard, it's like, when our girls were young, babies, toddlers, 5 years old or younger, I tried, and so did Michelle, we tried not to yell at them. And for the most part, I think we did a decent job. And I come from a yelling, screaming family, so it was a big deal for me to sort of, okay, yelling's not going to help. Even now, teenagers, that, I try not to yell. I've done it, definitely. I'm human and have my moments. But, when the girls were toddlers, I would try to be as kind and sweet as I could be, even, when they were having sort of 2 and 3-year-old meltdowns and throwing fits and all that, just trying to be firm, but kind and clear. And, look, I struggled with it at times, but let's just say yelling at a child for spilling the milk or breaking something or dropping a toy or even throwing a tantrum, probably not super effective, probably not authentically, mindfully responding. However, if the toddler runs out into the street, it's appropriate to yell, "Get out of the street!" forcefully, passionately, even to the point that it might scare them in service of making sure they don't get hit by a car. Right? Now, look, that's not a situation that happens every day, but in life, there are times when it's appropriate to very passionately, very specifically disagree, engage, argue, even yell, rant, rave, whatever. But if we're doing it mindfully, authentically, deliberately, right? Sometimes when we coach people and mentor people or manage people, really passionately challenging them, if we do it with their permission and effectively, can be exactly what's needed. We all need wake-up calls in life. So again, it's not so much the action as it is the intention. Where is it coming from? So when I say respond as opposed to react, I'm not saying don't have passion, don't engage, don't be sensitive and emotional. That's part of being human. If that's kind of how you're wired and how you roll, like me, that's fine. But do it from an authentic and mindful place of response as opposed to simply just a knee-jerk reaction. And sometimes it's hard. I know there are many situations in my life, and I can think of especially over the last 22 months during COVID, where I regret the way that I reacted to something. Right? I love Ray says using the Serenity Prayer. Right? The Serenity Prayer is what, Ray? It's change the things I can change, let go of the things I can't, and the wisdom to know the difference, something to that effect. I'm sort of butchering the words of it, but you know what I mean? Give me the strength to change what I can change, to let go of what I can't change, and then the wisdom to know the difference. Because really, there's really only 2 things that we can control in life: our attitude and our effort. That's it. So a lot of this freaking out is an attitude thing. It's a perspective thing. It's an approach thing. And also, there's a little part of effort, if you will, to maybe do some different things. But check in, feel your feelings, ask for help, and then see if you can authentically and mindfully respond as opposed to react. And look, I say all of this with a ton of compassion. I know it's an incredibly stressful, challenging, exhausting, uncertain time for so many of us. And I just acknowledge you for hanging in there. Happy birthday, Ray. Big 70 coming up on Sunday. I love that. Thanks to all of you who joined live and chimed in with some comments here on either Facebook or LinkedIn or even YouTube. If you watch the video of this after and you want to chime in with a comment or a question, feel free. I'm going to try to come on about once a week to do a live like this. Sort of depends on my schedule. But if you have suggestions for topics or questions you want me to answer, feel free. I appreciate being connected with you here on social media. And if you want to stay more connected with me and my work, you can also go to our website, which is mike-robbins.com. Be well.